Oh, good. All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Metro Board activities for September 26, 2024. Thank you for joining us today. Before we begin, I'll ask our Chief Safety and Readiness Officer, Teresa Impastato, to please provide today's safety contact. Ms. Impastato.
Thank you, Mr. Smedberg. In the event of an alarm activation, we'll exit this conference room via the glass doors and proceed into the lobby where we'll await further instruction from the security team. If we are in fact instructed to exit the building, I'll lead the group to our designated assembly point while the security team coordinates with first responders. There is an AED located at the entry desk, and in the event of a medical emergency, I'll retrieve the AED and render aid while awaiting emergency services. Lastly, restrooms are located in the vestibule area adjacent to this room. September is National Preparedness Month, and we encourage our customers to review your plans in the event of an emergency. I'd like to take a moment to review a few tips to keep you and your loved ones safe in the rare event that you encounter an emergency within the Metro system. Metro's Integrated Command and Communication Center monitors weather and area conditions and makes service adjustments as needed in response to real-time conditions. When using Metro Rail, always listen for instructions in stations and on trains. There are call boxes mounted on pylons on station platforms which enable passengers to communicate with station managers. There are also call boxes on each rail car which enable any rider to report an emergency to the train operator who is in constant radio communication with the Integrated Command and Communications Center. If there is an emergency on a train, you're safer to remain on the train unless advised by the train operator or emergency responders. When using Metro Bus, follow the instructions of your bus operator or emergency responders. In an emergency, the bus operator is able to call the command and control center on the bus radio and request assistance. There are emergency exit procedures listed on windows as well as hatches and doors on the bus. For additional information on navigating emergencies on the Metro system, please see the rider guide at wamata.com. And for your personal preparedness, please visit ready.gov. This concludes our safety contact.
Thank you, Teresa. And welcome everyone to the meeting of the board's executive committee. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'd like to note that Chair Santos is out of town on business this week, so I'll be chairing this meeting and the board meeting later today in her absence. Ms. Worth, the district's alternate member, will be filling in for Ms. Santos today. Since this is our first public meeting of the day, I'd like to ask Ms. Ellison, the board corporate secretary, to call the roll.
Alternate Director Worth.
Present.
Vice Chair Smedberg.
Present.
Vice Chair McAndrew.
Present.
Director Klein.
Present.
Director Lowe.
Present.
Director Letourneau.
Present.
Director Martin Proctor.
Good morning.
Mr. Vice Chair, you have quorum.
Thank you. Our first order of business is to approve the agenda. If there are no objections or any changes to the agenda from committee members, hearing and seeing none, we'll consider the agenda approved as presented. Now on to the approval of the minutes. We have minutes from our last public meeting on July 11th and the executive sessions of July 11th, August 29th, and September 11th and 12th before us for approval. If there are no objections or any changes or comments on those sets of minutes? Anyone? Okay. Hearing none, we'll consider the minutes approved as presented. We have one item on our agenda this morning, 2 reports from the Inspector General. I'd like to note that in order to reaffirm the IG's independence, the board has removed the requirement for the executive committee to vote to accept IG reports. While the committee will not be voting this morning to accept the 2 reports the IG is presenting, I'd like to provide Ms. Zamarin the opportunity to review any findings from these reports with the committee at this time. Ms. Zamarin, the floor is yours.
Thank you. On behalf of the Office of Inspector General, I am pleased to present the 34th semi-annual report, which covers the significant activities and achievements for the 6-month period from January 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2024. During this period, the Office of Inspector General's Office of Audit and Evaluations issued 20 contract audits, 1 performance audit, and 2 evaluation reports. OIG audit work led to approximately $7.6 million in possible savings identified through the audits and evaluations. Investigative work by the Office of Investigations resulted in 6 reports of investigation, 1 management alert, and 5 investigative referrals to management. 1 criminal matter investigated by the office resulted in a guilty plea by 2 former WMATA employees and 1 company owner for a procurement fraud scheme to defraud WMATA and the District of Columbia. Throughout the reporting period, we also maintained our OIG hotline, receiving over 260 hotline complaints that resulted in numerous investigations for the Office of Inspector General. I am also pleased to present the 2025 Annual Audit and Evaluation Plan. The plan is organized around several focus areas. Most significantly, the plan focuses on matters that pose the greatest threat to WMATA's finances and operations. In addition, we continue to prioritize audits and evaluations related to safety, as ensuring the safety of our riders and community are our utmost priority. OIG sought input in developing the plan from the board, senior executives, and other WMATA leaders. I want to thank the board and WMATA management for their collaborative efforts in developing the annual plan, as well as providing thoughtful ideas and suggestions that we were able to incorporate. Finally, I want to recognize the efforts of each member of the OIG staff. I continue to be amazed at their talent and dedication to the mission. They consistently demonstrate their commitment to improving WMATA and protecting the community through the quality of their work. I welcome any questions as to the semi-annual report or the audit plan.
Thank you, Ms. Zamarin. Are there any questions from executive committee members? Members of the board? Seeing none. Thank you, Michelle. And we really appreciate, your leadership in just these few months and the collaborative efforts that are ongoing now with WMATA staff. It's very much appreciated. So thank you.
And thank you very much. And I appreciate how welcoming everyone at WMATA has been.
Great. Appreciate it. All right, thank you. With no further business to come before the committee, we will stand adjourned. I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Letourneau to begin today's Finance and Capital Committee meeting. Mr. Letourneau. Okay, we're turning it over to Ms. Martin Proctor for the Safety Committee first. Wrong notes here. Okay. Ms. Proctor is the vice chair. Yeah, Mr. Drummer. Mr. Drummer is out, not here today, so Ms. Martin Proctor is filling in.
Oh, thank you so much, Chair Smedberg. Good morning again, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Board Safety and Operations Committee. I'm Camila Martin Proctor. I am the Vice Chair of the Safety and Operations Committee, and I will be moderating this upcoming meeting in Colonel Drummer's stead. First action to take place will be approval of the agenda and minutes. We have today's agenda in front of us for approval. Are there any objections by members of the committee? Okay. Hearing none, the agenda is approved as presented. Now to the approval of the minutes. We have the minutes of our September 12th meeting. Are there any objections to the minutes as presented? Okay. Hearing none, we'll consider the minutes approved as presented. Thank you. Clearing up all of our first point administrative items. We have one update on today's agenda, an update on the Rail Operations and Safety Program, including information on safety and the automation initiatives. I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Off, Ms. Wilkerson, and Mr. Johnson for today's presentation. Thank you so much, team.
Well, thank you, and good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Andy Off here, Chief of Infrastructure, and joined by my colleagues, Ms. Shanita Wilkinson, Mr. Jamie Johnson. I am standing in for Ms. Tiffany Jenkins this morning. She wasn't available today, so I'm not nearly as entertaining, but will certainly attempt to be as informative. As noted, our mission today is to provide the board and the larger public an update on many initiatives that our team is pursuing to make the system safer, more cost-effective, and to deliver better service for our customers. As it ties back to our strategic plan, as we'll talk about, the three levers we're really getting after here are, service excellence, regional opportunity and partnership, and sustainability. Each one of these initiatives certainly gets after delivering better service and also providing a more sustainable economic framework in the years to come as it applies to our operating system. So the 4 topics we'll specifically talk about today that are, moving us towards a safer, more cost-effective, and more reliable system are. We'll talk about some of the things we've done to our signal system, over the past 15 years, to make that a very stable, safe system. We'll talk about automatic doors and how we're doing there. Then we'll move into moving to removing a speed restriction that's been in place in the system for almost 40 years and returning to normal operating speeds, safe operating speeds. And then we'll also talk through our return to automatic train operations. So just this is a good place to start, and I'll certainly do my best to break down what can be a complicated conversation. But at the highest level, we refer to our system as automatic train control. So that is the system that keeps our train safely spaced and allows us to communicate between the control center and the wayside or the trains. Under the automatic train control system, there are 3 primary subsystems. The first, the automatic train protection system, referred to as ATP. This is the system that has always been on and will always be on. It is the system that ensures the safe separation of trains. This was the system. So what we're showing here, the readouts at the bottom, this basically shows what you would see on a train console. So the speed to the far left is the automatic train protection speed, or the safe speed. So that is a speed that is designed based upon how much curvature there is in the track and how much distance you need to safely stop. Then moving to the second, or the middle subsystem, we refer to as automatic train supervision, ATS. That is simply a system that was envisioned to allow the control center to slow down trains if from a scheduling perspective. So if you were, between Suitland and Branch Avenue and you were ahead of schedule, this would allow the control center to remotely send a performance level command to Suitland Station. When the train would pull into Suitland Station, it would receive that command and it would reduce its speed to some pre-assigned level, and then it would move at that speed between Suitland and Branch Avenue. It's not a system that's primarily used in how we manage the operation today. It is not a vital system nor a fail-safe system. You can only receive these speed commands when you are at a station and you have proper connectivity between the wayside antenna and the rail car. And then the far right is our automatic train operations system, which essentially replaces our operators from accelerating and decelerating. And to get into a little bit further detail, in terms of our maintenance practices on the automatic train control side, from Fort Totten, the issue there was our Generation 2 track circuits and the automatic train protection system, well documented. All those track circuits have been replaced. They are all out of the system. So that is certainly, a very positive thing. We've also done, significant testing and have ensured we've aligned all of our maintenance practices with our manufacturer's recommendations. So we're very confident that our signal maintenance practices now are certainly in line, best in class. Automatic door operations, Shanita will talk a little bit more in detail about that in a few slides. We have returned to automatic door operations system-wide. We are seeing, excellent benefits, for our customers and the operation, shorter end-to-end runtime, approximately 7% on-time performance improvement, on the red line alone. Still working through codifying, on-time performance, improvements on all the other lines. Hasn't just been quite enough time yet, but we know it is better. Just not sure exactly quantitatively how much. And we've had, upwards of 2 million door operations that have been safe since we've gone to automatic door operations. So a huge win for safety, huge win for our customers. Returning to design speeds, what this enables is, a shorter end-to-end runtime. enabling cost efficiencies that we would need less trains, over time to still deliver the same frequency. Automatic train operations, I think, we were able to engage an APTA peer review, and they came in front of the board, to speak about all the benefits, certainly from a safety perspective, mitigating red signal overruns primarily, and then also the better ride quality that our customers will experience moving to that platform. So this slide, overall summary, I think the ultimate conclusion is that by combining the three, technology and removing the speed restriction elements that we discussed, overall, about 10% more time efficient system. And certainly, time equates, to money to some degree, which is, super important. So just a few things to note on here. If you look at the green line as an example, and we'll talk about this a little bit in the next slide, there really is no advantage, because from a speed perspective, because we're already operating at 65 miles per hour, or the maximum design speed on the green line. And to elaborate on that, talking about returning to design speeds. So it is a long, convoluted story, but at the end of the day, in 1986, a decision was made based upon rail car performance of our 1000 series fleet to restrict the maximum operating speed to 59 miles per hour. That decision was made prior to the segments of the green line that run at 65 miles an hour. So when that part of the system opened, on the green line, the decision was made to run at 65. Why? None of us can exactly say, but those are the facts as of today. In fact, if you open up our rule book today, what it says is your maximum authorized speed is 59 miles per hour, with the exception of green line where you can go 65. That is what it says. So this is a major attempt not only to improve the customer experience, but also to, simplify and streamline rules, for our frontline employees. We are very confident all of our rail vehicles we know, have been tested, accepted for the maximum authorized speed of 75 miles per hour. I've been out there, Silverline Phase 1, between Spring Hill and Wheelie, about 3-mile run. That's a 75 mile per hour run. We did do testing at ATO and testing our trains. And our braking rate, acceleration rates of our trains, those standards have been consistent over the years. We have done a comprehensive evaluation, and just to highlight from a structural perspective, there were questions about operating at 75 miles per hour across some of our aerial structures. Speed in the dynamic loading world is a squared function, so it's a big deal. The faster you go, adds significant dynamic loading. So the team made the decision for structural reasons to reduce the speed from 75 to 65 on select aerial structures. So we've looked at this, power perspective, signal perspective, rail car perspective, structural perspective, communication perspective, to ensure that we've covered all the appropriate infrastructure elements that play into returning to our design speed. So if you think of the system as a whole, today our average operating speed is about 50 miles per hour. When we return to our maximum authorized speed of 75, doesn't mean we're 75 everywhere, but in certain segments, it would increase the operating speed of the system by about 8% to about 54 miles per hour. The example on this slide is of the red line. So as an example, between Shady Grove and Twin Brook, you can see it's all noted in purple to show that the maximum authorized speed between those two segments is 75. It doesn't mean you run, from 75 the second you leave Shady Grove until you arrive to Rockville, but, in between there are segments where you would travel at 75 miles per hour. Those are familiar with the red line. There's a long segment, an underground segment between Bethesda and Medical Center. That's about a 2-mile segment straight. That is one of the few underground segments where we do have, speeds up to 75 miles per hour in that segment. And I will be followed by Ms. Wilkinson to talk about auto doors. Shanita.
Good morning again. Auto doors impact. We were overjoyed to roll out auto doors system-wide on July 8th, 2024. And as previously noted, launched the first impact of auto doors in December the 5th, 2023 on the Red Line. Under auto doors, Legacy and 7Ks at the same time birth and open doors. Under manual door operation, 7Ks take an average of 4 seconds longer for the doors to open. So auto doors make train performance more consistent. When the schedule was built in June, time savings was incorporated and most lines have 2 minutes end-to-end savings. And we've heard from our customers about their experience that they have noticed and appreciate the savings. Mitigations for manual mode train operations. In manual mode, we have seen an increase in red signal violations and increase in wrong side door operations. Metrorail has implemented the point and call method to support a safer operations. I will give an overview of the point and call and implementation. Point and call method is a widely used safety technique designed to reduce human errors. It combines verbal and visual cues to ensure tasks are completed accurately. Point and call started in Japan and is used throughout the railroad industry, also in hospitals when giving out prescriptions. And I recently learned that it's also used in sports, particularly football, to bring around situational awareness. A little bit about the training. So point and call training is a computer-based training that has been established. All rail operators have taken the training at this time, and the training will be implemented into the initial and refresher courses. Rail transportation implemented point and call in August of 2024. A 2-week campaign was launched where managers, supervisors, and other field personnel went into the field to talk about point and call, coach employees, and provide guidance system-wide. Let's move to talk about some of the benefits. Combining multiple senses, sight, speech, and hearing enforces attention and memory, helping to prevent mistakes. Point and call has the ability to reduce and prevent errors by 85%. It increases blood flow in the front of the brain to stimulate focus. Study has also shown that pointing to an object and verbalizing it for your intended actions or identify objects increases attention and awareness. Regular use of the method helps to develop strong safety habits and makes it easier to avoid human error in repetitive tasks. And that is one of the things we have seen in our incidents during investigation, that a lot of times it's just inattentive or human error. As we know now, people have a lot of things on their mind. They bring their home to work and they're just not paying as close attention as they have been in the past as the world is changing. So point and call is a method that will help bring your attention back to your duties and focus your mind. Thank you. We're moving on to Jamie.
Good morning, members of the board. I wanted to talk about, actually, Andy, I think, is this your slide?
Yeah, very quickly, I'll knock
Good,
this slide out.
good. I'm very
So
pleased.
as we focus on automatic train operations, on the infrastructure side, Jamie's going to talk about it from a, safety certification perspective. We have been testing the system consistently, for over 18 months now. We've done, numerous overnight tests, with our partners at the WMSC have witnessed a lot of our testing. We do have further testing scheduled, demonstration testing, where we will, purposely put some defective conditions in the field to show how the train computer system will behave when it notices these things. Our stopping performance, so in ATO, as the train approaches the station, there are antennas that tell the train, hey, your station's 2,700 feet away, 1,300 feet away, and the train begins to take, a break on its own. We've seen, about 98%, effectiveness in our, station stopping, which is outstanding. And as we'll talk a little bit on the training side, operators are still, very vigilant, as they approach a station to ensure that their train is, taking a break in ATO as they approach a station. So red signal overruns, certainly have not seen any of those and have had over 3,500 successful station stops. So now I will be followed by Jamie who will, focus on the rest of the program. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Good morning, members of the board. So it's not a coincidence that you have individuals from infrastructure, operations, and safety and readiness presenting to you today on these complex projects. So the key critical part of implementing something like automatic train operations, the return to it, is collaboration, coordination, and integration of multiple different teams across Metro to ensure that the hazards and the gaps and various scenarios are considered. And steps have been taken to address and mitigate the issues that we come across. So the safety and readiness team, from where I'm from, plays a key role in a couple of ways. If we could move to the next slide. Great. So I wanted to talk about safety certification and training. So safety certification is the independent internal process that oversees the delivery of significant projects. Specialists from the safety team have worked alongside Andy's project team to assess the hazards and associated risks that these changes introduce, ensure the project mitigates those hazards, and that the various steps and associated documentation are completed as per the plan, all the time communicating and coordinating with the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission. So just to highlight some of the sort of key milestones on the safety certification side. Firstly, the operating rules were reviewed and the necessary changes made well ahead of time, so we know where we're headed. The concept of operations and various other documentations were reviewed and submitted, and I'll come to the concept of operations a little more detail shortly. Next month will be the third of 3 workshops with the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission, which we've been holding to ensure that there's open discussion and everyone is on the same page at any issues that people have with this project. And then there is the final operational readiness demonstration, which is due in November for all internal and external stakeholders to give them a last opportunity to see the changes in action before we go live. So now if we talk a little more about training. So training has been developed and will be delivered by the technical training and development team in safety and readiness. And I'll describe the train operator training more specifically in a second, but as well as train operators, special ATO training has been created for those maintaining the system, mainly the signals, as you would imagine, and the cars themselves, as well as the rail traffic controllers in the Metro Integrated Command and Communication Center. And also those employees who are out on the track, so they have situational awareness of how things may be changing. All these changes are being reviewed and submitted as part of the safety certification process. So I wanted to highlight in a little more detail 2 specific elements, the concept of operations on this slide and then the training. So the concept of operations really does outline how things will work under ATO, and it's important to remember that the system is already designed to operate in ATO. So the reversion back to ATO has minimal impact to operations. However, there is, of course, some degree of change that we need to highlight, codify, and explain to our staff. ATO will be the default mode of operations for trains, which will be, we'll see those benefits that Andy has highlighted when it comes to safety and service for the vast majority of our operation. But there will commonly be a combination of manual and automatic modes because abnormal conditions will require the train operator to revert to manual as they operate today. For example, when you're single tracking, or there is severe weather, there's a hazardous condition or low adhesion on the track, the operator will transfer to manual at the direction or permission of the rail traffic controller. And the train operator needs the ability to handle the trains braking or the movement from track to track. That can't be done under an automatic operation, that has to be done manually. So manual operation is a continuation of what operators are doing today. The other part that we've considered very seriously is the impact for workers on the roadway. And there are 2 primary situations to consider, both of which maintain the same protection and level of safety for the workers on the track as today. So if the workers request a protected static work zone like foul time or exclusive track occupancy, and I know members of the board have now been through that training, so I hope those words are familiar. Trains will not enter their work area, and trains will navigate these in manual operation, for example, single tracking. So there's no change there for the roadway worker. If the roadway workers are mobile, there's the advanced mobile flagger on the platform ahead of the crew, and that will remain our protocol. This provides a secondary layer of assurance in addition to the primary protection provided by a watchman who's on the track with the crew. And they warn the workers that a train is approaching. So in addition, that protocol requires the train operator to proceed past employees who have moved to a place of safety at no more than 35 miles an hour. The train movement will be executed in manual as it is today. The only change is that the train operator will be required to transfer to and transfer back to ATO when they reach those workers who are conducting a track inspection, for example. So as I said, it's really important to emphasize to you and our staff that the experience for the roadway worker will be the same as it is today. So the other area we wish to highlight was training. We've given a lot of thought to how to most effectively educate our operators and assure that they are competent. We've considered all the training methodologies open to us, and the training comprises a blended combination of content and delivery methods to ensure the best results. Specific ATO training modules have been developed for train operators, as you would expect. It will be a 2-day training, as outlined on this slide, which starts in the classroom with theory, rule changes, and tabletop scenarios. The emphasis is not only on how ATO works, but also on the transfer between ATO and manual, which we just discussed. That's a key element, is how we move between automatic and manual operations. For the second part, day 2, we considered putting operators onto the main line to experience ATO, but we quickly realized the benefits and scenarios we need to demonstrate are much more effectively addressed in simulators in an environment more conducive to dialogue and learning. The simulators allow us to create atypical conditions such as inclement weather or equipment malfunctions and train the operators to properly respond in a consequence-free environment that affords the ability for immediate feedback and learning. The operators will spend 4 hours in these simulators. They're a resource we're lucky to have, and we really want to maximize their value before undergoing their knowledge and competency assessment on the right-hand side of the slide. It's important to note that all rail vehicle operators are already certified to operate trains, so we're not starting from scratch here. They will be receiving qualification in addition to their certification in ATO before operating a train in ATO on the main line. And this ATO module will be folded into the initial training for all operators moving forward. So to close out, we wanted to provide you with an update, an overview of the timeline and the various actions that are pending as we move forward to initiating ATO. One thing to note is timing could vary dependent on the Washington Metrorail Safety Commission's review process. We have to be patient and provide as much information as we can when requested to ensure that's a smooth process. This month, we're finalizing the training and beginning employee engagement with the unions. And then next month, we plan to execute the final workshop with the WMSC, as I mentioned, to iron out any final concerns. In October also, we want to pilot the training with staff, union, and our oversight present. We want to receive concurrence on the concept of operations and the red line test results next month, as well as start training the red line operators. And then in November, while that training continues and wraps up, we will execute the operational readiness demonstration on the red line to ensure everyone can see and feel exactly what ATO feels like before we go live. And then moving towards the end of the year in December, which will come quickly, we plan to initiate ATO on the red line. That's the target, but ultimately that's dependent on the concurrence from the Washington Metrorail Safety Commission and their concurrence on what we call our temporary use notice, which gives us the green light to move ahead with initiating the operation. The new year will see us monitor and verify the red line before moving towards the whole system activation. So that was huge amounts of information on various different topics, but we wanted to ensure that you had the latest on all these various activities and initiatives, and we're here for questions.
Thank you so much, our safety and operations team. Are there any questions from the committee? I see Dr. Lowe's hand was first, and then Spring, and then our chair.
This was a big presentation, so bear with me while I try to get through these questions. I'd like to start by actually just going back to something that actually we now know is not related to ATO per se, or the red line derailment at Fort Totten. It is not related to ATO, but it was related to these track circuits. We've replaced all the circuits. The circuits are in our asset management system,
Yes, ma'am, absolutely.
and we have processes for maintaining the circuits and auditing the maintenance of the circuits.
Yes, ma'am.
So in plain language, can you walk me through how the bad circuits ended up out there and what we do differently now in order to maintain, test, and check these new circuits?
Yes, ma'am. No, thank you very much for the question. The circuits at issue were referred to as the Generation 2 circuits. Those have all been removed from the system. The anomaly is referred to in the NTSB report as a parasitic oscillation, which essentially was a very minute period in time where the train that was on the tracks was not showing occupancy as it should have. So essentially, it was a failure of the automatic train protection system. All those circuits, have been removed. One of the processes I would like to highlight is a process we refer to as our loss of shunt tool and process. This is a process by which, if there is any loss of shunt identified in the system, it is noted. We have an engineer on call. The report goes to them. If it meets certain criteria, there is an alarm in the control center that notifies leadership of this potential loss of shunt issue. So it is a very robust, process. It was part of a closure to close an NTSB recommendation. It's something that, it is very much a part of our process. I, lived that, reacted to it on, numerous occasions. Those things happen for a variety of, non-safety related reasons, but it is something that we pay, extremely strict attention to. So that's just, one example of a practice we have. Also, just from a maintenance perspective, we do have, good quality processes in place, on Tiffany's team to ensure that the wayside track circuit testing we're doing, is timely. There are pretty, even in the big railroad or class 1 world, there are regulations around track circuit testing. We exceed those, in our standards for a host of reasons. So we're confident that our maintenance practices and the signal circuit system we have in the system today, has, gotten past all of those issues in our history.
Have all caps from that NTSB investigation been closed?
Yes, ma'am.
Outstanding. Okay. The presentation focused on savings from the customer's perspective as measured in time, which, I think is like the right way to think about it and is great. But I also have to think about it in terms of money. So this may be the wrong group of people to ask this question, but it seems to me this 10% savings on time, that is a very significant number. It's not a small number. Do we have any idea of, can we annualize what the savings are at the current level of service from returning to ATO? I feel like I asked this question like a year ago and there was an answer, but I need to be reminded.
No, that's a great question, board member. So obviously, the number one purpose of this program is safety. No getting around that, and that's why we had an APTA peer review. You may recall about a year and a half ago came in for experts, including around the world. It is non-debatable that running an automatic train operation is safer than manual mode. And that's why red signal violations is our number one. So safety is our primary focus. Number two is reliability. So running the system we have today more reliable, which is better for the equipment, better for the customers, and overall performance. Then there is being more efficient. We believe if all of these factors come together, we could save upwards of $15 million a year. Now, to put that in context, this will get better as we get better at it. So a good example is we're thinking through for the FY26 generated proposed budget that you will receive in December, how much we would initially put in as potential savings. Now, that savings could be just straight savings or additional service in places that we're already, know we need service enhancements as ridership is really growing strongly. But there's no getting around it. This will also drive cost efficiency throughout the system. And that is another exciting aspect of what we're doing. So we wouldn't obviously budget 15 million in year one because one, it all has to work. Two, as we do budget development, we have to have our approval to make sure this all comes together. But it's really a combination of the three elements together equal the big results. So doors is certainly helping, but we'd probably get the efficiency on reliability and not book savings on that because it's one variable. Then we get into correct speeds, and then we do automatic train operation, and together it really means the entire operation is more efficient. Again, on top of being much safer.
Okay, I'm totally
Hopefully
okay
that
with
helps.
thinking about it that way. That is really helpful. This is something to watch. And I think I'm really interested in how, in hearing an update as we move forward with how this is playing out operationally. I mean, of course, I think, safety is like the first thing that we have to be thinking about. And I remember when we did the APTA peer review, how emphatic all of the experts we were hearing from that this was safer. And I think that I've continuously expressed throughout this process, like a desire for a lot of urgency for us to get back to this. That said, I appreciate that we need to proceed with deliberation, coordinate with the WMSC. There's all this testing and training. I understand this has been helpful in helping me understand why it takes this amount of time. On the topic of training, did I see on that slide that operators can only pass the new training with a perfect score?
Yes, but if they don't pass the first time, they have a second opportunity, and then they can go back for retraining for a third opportunity.
Okay, but as a customer, I can know when I'm riding on a train, that train is being operated by someone who received a perfect score
Absolutely.
on this training. Okay.
And it's just to again emphasize they're certified operators already. So they've already gone through extensive training to get where they are today. This is a qualification, an addendum almost to their certification.
Learning is never done, Mr. Johnson.
It's continuous.
Okay. Can we go back to the timeline? This is my last question. You verbally went over where the WMSC touch points are on this timeline, but they're not graphically represented. And I understand that's because you don't control them. Why commit to them in writing? But let me just make sure I understand how many touch points they are and where we're roughly guessing they might hit. I heard something about next month. Is next month October? And what was that touch point?
October was a more informal opportunity, a workshop to air any concerns or issues so that we can plan for the two big milestones, which are authorization to proceed with the red line and authorization to proceed with the rest of the system in the new year. So, and we're targeting December for the first and then the new year for the latter.
Okay, and that was the temporary use notice
Correct.
that you were referring to?
Yes.
Okay.
They provide concurrence on those two documents.
Got it. Okay, this was a great update. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I just had a question about the point and call method. Is that only used in manual or also in ATO? And then also if you can just provide like a really simple example of when that's used and how frequently?
Absolutely. So a brief example of when it's used. Before your train departs a station, you will look at your speed commands to ensure that you have them. You will point to your speed commands and actually call them out. You would then also look at the signal ahead. You will point to the signal and call it out by number, whether it's D9904, and you would say either red or lunar. Lunar meaning is white and you can proceed ahead. Right? It will also be used for door operations. When you stick your head out the window, you will point to the platform to ensure that you're on the platform side and say platform side. to ensure that you, prior to opening the doors, to make sure that you open the doors on the correct side of the platform, okay? During ATO, you will not necessarily need to do that because we also have automatic doors. At any time, if you have to come out of ATO, automatic operation, and return to manual, then you would then proceed to use point and call.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Jamie, I'm not sure if this should be directed at you or Andy. Who are the trainers and who trains the trainers?
So the trainers are a separate department. They are drawn from experienced operators, if we're talking about train operators, and then they go through a training program to qualify them in order to train. And I don't know the exact numbers of those but that's so there's certain level, there's experience, training of the trainers, and then that qualification in order for them to deliver specific types of training to different groups.
And did the MSC have any involvement in any of the decisions about training the trainers and selecting the trainers? Just out of curiosity.
No,
No,
no, that's something that's our responsibility.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then as it relates to these these workshops and MSC engagement, do you proceed to the next workshop after successful sort of completion or what they feel is completion of that current workshop, or do you just proceed on? Or are you getting feedback from them along the way? What's that interaction look like?
I think the workshops really are an opportunity to draw out that feedback and put us all in the same room discussing the priority issues and ensuring that there's a common understanding of what those issues are. We have set the workshops when we've needed them in the project, ultimately. Okay. It's not a standard operating procedure for us to engage in workshops. It's because this is a complex issue for some, and we want to make sure that it's clear what we're talking about and there's no misunderstanding, so they can give their concurrence with all the information available to us and to them.
Okay. Maybe putting you on the spot a little bit, but how's that engagement been? Been good dialogue, good back and forth? It's your views.
Yeah, we've exchanged huge amounts of information. We meet at least once or twice a week, and we have been meeting for once or twice a week for 18 months now. So the workshop is not an isolated incident, it's an ongoing conversation. Obviously, there is a tension there because they are asking us questions at every step, but that's a healthy tension and it's an intentional tension. That's their role as overseer. But it's a continual evolution of the relationship. We invest a lot in it to make it as effective as possible and straightforward for them to give concurrence.
Okay, yeah, so just to be clear, they would have to give approval of this, right? That's the understanding.
Yes, approval is absolutely accurate. The word they like to use is concurrence.
Yeah. And where would that fall on this timeline?
So in my view, there are two big points for receiving concurrence. The first is to issue that temporary use notice for the red line. We're targeting December. And then the second would be once we have verified the red line is in good working order, if there are any tweaks, any lessons we need to learn from the red line, we will implement them on the red line, and then we'll move forward to get that second concurrence for the rest of the system.
Okay. And is this an agreed upon timeline between WMATA and the Safety Commission, or is that
this
is how you see it sort of playing out?
We've absolutely communicated this to them. There's a common understanding of what we're trying to work towards, and it's a continual dialogue trying to meet these deadlines and move us forward.
Yeah, I don't mean to press you a lot, but
no.
It's really helpful for us to understand.
Absolutely.
Because there's obviously been a lot of discussion about the Safety Commission, and so I just want to make sure that we're all clear.
Yeah, Chair, but I'll add a comment in there. So one, we really appreciate all the collaboration WMSC, specifically on auto doors, and I think the data proved out we've actually enhanced safety and reliability on the system. So we wouldn't have got there without them. We appreciate. I personally attended our first workshop with leadership at WMSC. I've personally been on overnight trains on ATO testing with members of the senior team here, including the members that aren't here, and WMSC staff. As Jamie mentioned, they've been out multiple nights. They have a specific staff member that is tasked with this, who's kind of a signaling expert, subject matter expert. They've been talking with back and forth almost every single day. So, there's an enormous amount of collaboration there. The reason the date, so this date has been communicated from us as senior leaders to WMSC for well over probably a year, I would think at this point. And certainly the last 6 to 7 months pretty intensively on this schedule. And the reason December is important is, one, we have a pick. And that is really important because we don't want to do something in between picks because employees can move around. So once they're at a location, we want to train them so they can run. And that's why we're doing red line first. So that is a big element, the pick. Number two, we have a holiday period winter construction shutdown coming up that, we put information out last week. I'll mention again in my report. That is a pretty big impact. So we're fitting that. Right after that, we run into winter. We don't want to start something in winter conditions. So December allows us to make sure that if there's any issues, we can get before kind of sleet, ice kind of events, something like that. As Jamie mentioned, we go into manual operation if that happened. We have inauguration. We got, again, a little bit left to winter. We got cherry blossom, and then we have World Pride, and then we have July 4th. So when you stack everything up, we've been working for over a year to really be deliberate in our planning efforts to isolate variables as best we can to give our employees the best chance of success out in the field and not putting too much onus on a train operator and controller at the same time. So I just want to give that extra context. So it's not just arbitrary, it's very systematic of why these schedules are put together.
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. Really, really helpful. This, not only from the money efficiency perspective, but the safety perspective and what it's going to mean for our customers and the operation of the system, which it was built to do, right? I mean, it was built to be on ATO. So let's get back to it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, team. I believe we have other questions from fellow board members. Board Member Letourneau?
Paul kind of went where I was going with this, but I mean, honestly, I just want to make sure, I've asked this question before from here, that there's the same level of urgency on the MSC's part when it comes to ATO implementation from the very top. Has there been leadership involvement in these overnight exercises, for instance? Because I know all the work that we've been doing here, and I think we view this as pretty much the safest thing that we can do to improve the system at this point. And I haven't always gotten the impression that the MSC is treating it like that. Not to say that there isn't collaboration at the staff level. So I just really want, as a board member, to kind of send that message that, this needs to be the top priority for both organizations at this point to get done, because it has gone on a long time, and I think we've done a lot of diligence. So I don't know, maybe Randy, if you want to comment any further on it, or...
I think your comment is valid. We are doing everything we can from our end to engage, supply information, collaborate. Again, it's not, to me, it's not even a debatable fact that ATO was safer. We have an independent panel a year and a half ago. I don't believe, I haven't heard anyone suggest the opposite of that. So I think now it's to do this final workshop. There's been overnight staff involvement. I don't believe exec leadership has been involved in overnight, but they certainly have been invited, and we welcome that opportunity. And maybe that's the demonstration test. They'll be scheduled to do that. But we're open, obviously, to do any and all things to work with our partner, because this is definitely going to enhance system safety. So, and again, I want to reiterate, we are doing a lot of collaboration with them, whether it's RWP training to this, auto doors, safety certification and other things. So there's a lot of things going on, but we've made it clear that we believe this is the most important item on the rail program to enhance safety. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Board Member McAndrew?
Thank you. Very informative. Just a quick question, two questions. One on point and call method. The last example provided to Board Member Worth was very valuable. I think what would be also valuable is to understand what level or lack thereof of use of point and call was in place before the most recent discussion, or why it might not have been in use before. But then also, Mr. Opp, if you can kind of give me a sense of kind of the next steps on testing results, and then just next steps for the speed. Kind of what do we need to do? I imagine there's an MSC component with that as well. And the timeline, I imagine the utility of the speed discussion going much smoother as we bring on ATO as well, just from like simplicity. But those are the two questions that I have.
So prior to the implementation, we did not have point and call. It is a practice that we actually got more information from through APTA, and we had some conversations with other agencies that are currently using it, like in New York. And so we decided that this would be a method we would like to try out to take on to improve safety and to help mitigate some of our current safety violations.
Sir, relative to the design speed, removing the speed restriction. So part of the safety certification process, there are two separate safety certification checklists, one for automatic train operations and another for returning to original design speed. So the same, we establish a checklist, agree on what the criteria and the wickets are we need to work through in order to demonstrate that it is safe to return to that mode of operation. So those are the tests that we're running. I think, as I mentioned, a lot of this, was power. Can the power system handle increased acceleration, increased deceleration? You have regenerative braking, all sorts of other dynamics that are in play when you're running at a higher operating speed. The structural components that we took a look at and dialed down, some speeds, just for preservation, state of good repair purposes. So those are two separate things. That we are working through. So as much collaboration as we have at the WMSC on automatic train operations, just about the same extent on returning to the design speed. So they're very much both in play.
I guess, and maybe I missed it in the deck, but in terms of the timeline for speed, as you're working through that process, where are we at and kind of where do you expect to be in terms of flipping the switch to get back to design speed?
Yeah, so the intent, and I'll let Jamie elaborate also, the intent is, we certainly want to be operating at our maximum design speed when we return to ATO. So the intent is that those are aligned for a handful of reasons, primarily based upon how, the signal system behaves, and just to streamline from an operator's perspective how the system functions. And then at the end of the day, from my perspective, it's about, in an enforced safe speed, we have one, and that is how we operate. Right now, we have this mixed mash of trying to run to a speed that is not enforced, and it causes challenges for, Shanita and the team.
Yeah, I'm going to add one more comment to that. I think it's an important element on safety certification. And you jump in if I say it incorrectly or you think there's more detail. But as part of the safety certification process that we actually went through with the WMSC on Silverline Phase 2 and on Potomac Yards, they both got safety certified for the higher speed. So when we did Silverline Phase 2, again, all the infrastructure was built to run Silverline Phase 2. It's kind of a weird process put together here. Silverline Phase 1 can run 75 miles an hour. The design for Silverline Phase 2 was 65 miles an hour, but all of the testing that was done both in the internal safety certification and WMSC concurrence, or Jamie said approval, was done with those thresholds. Second, all of our acceptance on the 7,000 series trains, also 6,000 series trains and 3,000 series trains that are in operation, were done with certification, not at this point, not with WMSC, because this was before the WMSC, but all tested and certified to run at max 75 miles an hour, and all infrastructure was built to handle that as well. So we're really kind of putting Metro back together again. And in so many ways, we've moved from the norm of what this place was designed to operate. So I'm not a car person, but it may be a little more analogous to some people. It's like buying a Lamborghini and putting it in second gear on I-95. With no traffic. And that's kind of what we've done for a long time. And the reality is we want to safely operate and most efficiently operate the infrastructure that we built. So if we don't do this, it really means that we've overbuilt our infrastructure, overbuilt our trains to not use them as designed. Where most agencies in the United States are doing everything they can to lift design or speed restrictions so they can operate the safest and most efficiently. And again, everyone you see at that table was not involved in these decisions. Some of these were, and some of them we don't even have records for that happened, or there's kind of contradictory things. So this team has dug really deep to really resolve a long outstanding issue here. And again, very collaborative with WMSC on it.
And just to build on Mr. Clark's comment there, the speed restriction of 59 is an administrative control. It's a rule. It's not programmed into our system. So I am certain that at certain times operators exceed that 59. That's not because we're proud of that. It's just that's the reality because the system is designed to accommodate that. What we're trying to bring is consistency, and it's actually previous findings in NTSB report that 59, it causes uncertainty, confusion, and now we're introducing the design back into the train operators on what they're following on the console will just make everything much more clear, much more straightforward, and everyone will be following the rules as designed. Just want to sort of emphasize that point.
Board Member Klein?
Thank you. This has been a great presentation. I think it's worth emphasizing not only the safety improvements, which obviously are always the top priority, but as others have mentioned, as we're thinking regionally about the future of transit and the resources needed for that investment, showing that we are always using the existing assets as efficiently as possible to get the most out of everything we've already invested is hugely important. And so I thank you for that. I did have one question on the ATO slide that talked about the KPI and testing. A KPI of 98% obviously sounds pretty good, but when we're talking about automatic starting and stopping of trains, somehow I felt like you would be looking for a higher level of performance. So can you just dive into that a little bit more?
Yes, ma'am. No, absolutely. So the key performance indicator we're discussing there is in automatic train operations, as the train is approaching a station, there are, we refer to them as wayside markers, but a box with an antenna on it that is telling the train you are 2,700 feet from the station, you are 1,300 feet from the station, and at those decision points, the train's computer begins to apply a brake so that it can properly stop. Okay, so at times, so I think what Shanita would tell you is that is from a training perspective, that is when our operators need to be the most attentive, right? Because at times, that system, it's not a safe train separation issue, right? It's ensuring the train stops at the platform thing. So at times, the train operator will need to apply a manual brake if that antenna to rail car connection doesn't happen for some reason. So it's not an effect of the train properly stopping because there's an object ahead and we need to avoid that object. It's a function of properly stopping to, so it's a reliability issue, not a safety issue from our, obviously, a train moving too fast through a station, for a variety of reasons, could or could not be an issue. We don't want that. So, we need to make sure these marker coils work, but there are times when a train operator's got to be vigilant approaching a station and may have to take a manual brake, and that is going to be a big part in the simulator, I'm sure. If that.
So what we're measuring there is just did that signal connect?
Correct.
Each time you pass one of the wayside
Correct.
signal or
And
symptoms.
did that connection happen? And did the train properly berth automatically with all doors on the platform to properly service the customer?
So you're not measuring, did the train actually stop at the platform with that indicator? Because if the signal for whatever reason doesn't connect, the operator is expected to stop the train there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you so much, team. Are there any further questions from the board at this point? I do have 2 points of clarification before we wrap things up here. Once again, thank you so much for this amazing presentation. I told you guys how excited everybody's going to be about the run and shoot point and call thing. I still owe you a custom WMATA football. I'm getting it together, I promise. I'm having the kids help me design it, and we're going to present it to the team because I think that this is one of those points where WMATA has taken a really good step and showed some intersectionality with regards to training and best practices, and I want to give kudos to your team for bringing that to us. Just for 2 points of clarification, with regards to the rule book, I know that we had discussed this, but the rule book is updated annually, biannually?
Every 6 months.
Excellent. So it is a living document.
Yes, we're continually working on the rule book. It's a collection of rules that have evolved over many years, and there's always room for improvement. And it's something we have a team, full time working on how to take best practice from the industry, feedback from our employees, which is really important, as well as the union and management to make the rules the best they can be.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And just for additional clarification regarding the training and the assessment, I know that it is going to be fully accessible because we're not seeing this as a barrier for our operators or our fellow employees and consultants as we move forward. We're seeing this as an opportunity for growth. So if we can just clarify that as well.
No, absolutely. So with any of our assessments, we consult with our accessibility team who has access and specialist knowledge to ADA requirements. And any training we put together goes through a review. So we receive advice on how best to make that training accessible and what extra support we need to provide to students should they have any accessibility needs. We know we have a very diverse group of individuals who perform the role of train operator in this instance, but across the board, we have a very diverse group, levels of education. And so we have to be sure with our training that it appeals and resonates and can be understood by everyone, not just, what you might say is mainstream needs.
Thank you so much. Seeing no further questions, I'd like to thank you. And with no further business to come before the committee, we stand adjourned. I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Letourneau to begin the Finance and Capital Committee meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Martin Proctor, and good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's meeting of the Finance and Capital Committee. Our first order of business is to approve the agenda. I'd like to move the agenda as presented. Are there any objections by members of the committee to the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as presented. Now to the approval of the minutes. We have the minutes of our September 12th meeting before us for approval. Are there any objections to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, we'll consider the minutes approved as presented. We have one item on our agenda, which is Metro's FY24 year-end financial results. This will help inform the committee and the board as the general manager and staff are working toward drafting the FY 2026 budget, which will be presented later this fall. And I really want to just take a moment as we look at these results and thank Utende, thank her entire team, as well as the general manager, because having a positive variance at the end of the year is not always something that we've been able to accomplish here. But especially when you dive into this and you look at the factors that went into it and the fact that we actually were under revenue projections but still ended up to the positive is a sign that management was really trying to drill down and be efficient. So thank you so much, and why don't we dive in?
Thank you, sir. So good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Yetunde Olumide. I'm the Chief Financial Officer here at the Washington Metro. Today, I'll be presenting the pre-audit FY24 operating results. I'm happy to do so. Metro's operating results for FY24 demonstrates our commitment to financial sustainability and emphasize Metro's commitment to transparency, accountability, and strategic resource management. The positive results demonstrate good financial stewardship and advances our strategic transformation plan objectives of both financial sustainability and service excellence, as well as underlines Metro's commitment to financial stability and service continuity. In addition to Metro's continues its ridership recovery, across all modes, Metro demonstrated significantly increased ridership relative to FY23. Rail ridership had the strongest year-over-year at 27% higher than the previous year when including only tapped ridership. We had budgeted for an aggressive rail recovery in FY24, and actuals was slightly below budget. We're happy to report that non-tapped trips fell by 77% versus FY23. This improvement demonstrates the success of our investment in retrofitting fare gates across the system. Our bus ridership continues to recover strongly. Bus ridership exceeded budget by 11.7 million trips and was 14% higher than FY23. Metro's robust management of expenses allowed us to end FY24 $62 million favorable to budget for expenses. These savings were visible across multiple expense categories. The hiring freeze enacted earlier this year kept personnel expenses lower than budget. We also continue to aggressively manage contracts, material supplies, and paratransit service options. Overall, Metro's net operating results ended FY24 favorable to budget by $28 million, while revenue was unfavorable to budget. This was offset by expense savings. Passenger revenue was unfavorable to budget due to lower average fares than anticipated across all modes and also due to the mix of trips. In terms of non-passenger revenues, parking and joint development revenues were also below budget due to a slower than anticipated recovery and lease schedule changes. However, this was offset by higher interest earned on investments. Again, savings in vacancies, materials and supplies, contract maintenance, and our strategic promotion of more convenient and less expensive alternate service providers for paratransit customers helped keep expenses below budget. For the next steps, staff will continue to develop the FY26 budget, provide an FY26 and 27 operating budget outlook for the board in October, and submit the proposed GM FY26 budget to the board in December. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
All right, questions, start members of the committee. Mr. Smember. Go for it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yatende, a question for you. With the expenses, is it fair to assume that the reduction in, what is it, the 62 million is in addition to the 50 that took place last year? The 50 is not included in that 62.
That is accurate, sir. Okay. The 62 is in addition to the 50 that was explained previously.
Okay. So 110, 112. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So I'll ask the question that's probably the obvious one for the public, which is, okay, we a surplus, which in the context, hopefully every organization of this size would have some sort of surplus. You don't want to run down to zero. But what would be the plan for utilizing, so to speak, the surplus, whether it's holding the money in reserve or applying it for next year or something of that nature?
I think that's strict.
I think that's for you.
From a standpoint. So obviously, we have a current FY. This is the close of FY 25. Sorry, FY 24. We're only a few months into FY 25. We'll have the general manager proposed budget in December. We're going to have a couple conversations with the board in October and November. Unlike last year where we had an existential crisis, quite frankly, that we had to work with our partners to kind of re-baseline, and we didn't fully re-baseline, but we solved most of the re-baselining problem. We didn't solve the capital problem, but we solved most of the operating baseline problem that last year, and we appreciate all the collaboration with our partners to get to there. You're right. Obviously, we have a cost savings surplus, and I appreciate what the chair just mentioned. Last year, we did $50 million savings to start the year, saved $60 million, so that's $110 million. So quite frankly, when people tell me to be cost efficient, I tend to get my hair up a little bit because I think the facts of what this management team and Yetunde, Brian, and like the people that really have a lot of staff, they are managing expense so tightly. So I really am happy that we end up with this, what officially defines a surplus. On the staff end, there's a larger discussion whether we should have a reserve or not. Right now, by policy, the general manager has a reserve line item, but whether the board should have a reserve policy is certainly something you all could discuss. For us, one of the things we'll probably be looking at is, not defined yet, but using that surplus to buy down the capital that we push towards operating in next year's budget. It is a horrible practice for an organization to use your capital dollars for operating. We all know that, and it's eating away at our capital capacity long term. Secondarily, obviously, staff feels there is need for some additional targeted service. Not gigantic amount of service, but targeted. A good example that we had a lot of discussions about last year, we really believe that we need to open the rail system at 6 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday, not 7 a.m. We're really anomalous to all of the other rail systems, not only nationally, but around the world. It also is a major regional activity center connector. Airports is a good example, but jobs, and especially lower income service worker jobs. That's one area. Red line, we are starting to see significant crowding on certain parts of the day, on parts of the system. We are going to have to figure that out for FY26, and we said that last year that eventually is going to become a pressure point. We have to get back to running more 8-car trains than 6-car trains on probably exclusively in the red. We have some crowding conditions building on orange. Not orange crush like the old days, but there's certain days that we're getting there. We're starting to see significant issues depending on time of day and events on the green line, especially above Mount Vernon. And so the question is, when do we try to move the yellow line back towards Greenbelt and rail car operator operating budget? Other areas of the system, we probably are potentially running more service than we might actually need. So putting all those factors together, the idea here when we get to the December proposed budget is allocating that $28 million, knowing that we are still unfortunately using capital will be overwhelming primary purpose that we would, from the staff point of view. But obviously there'll be a big healthy debate about that between the GM budget and generally we do board action around April.
Okay. No, thank you for that answer. I mean, I certainly would love to be able to continue the conversation at the board level on the fiscal reserve policy with board guidelines. And then I think the early opening on weekends is something that we have discussed in the past that makes a lot of sense. So hopefully we can continue to move forward on both those things. Director Loeb.
I can tell that I'm going to be hearing the phrase service optimization a lot in the next few months, but now I feel like I have a much better sense of like what you really mean by that and what it might look like. Parking is continuing to underperform. And so my one question is like whether we really anticipated just how much parking was going to underperform when we did the strategic plan for joint development. Is it too soon to say like we need to take a second look at that? Is this something the team is discussing internally?
Thank you for your question.
Want to go first, Lieutenant?
Absolutely. Thank you for your question, board member. So parking came in about 16% below budgeted levels. That was about $5.5 million. And what we're seeing is that it trends with ridership, with real ridership especially. Each year we go back, we look at our estimates again, we look at our forecasts. Right now, what we're seeing at the end of 24 and first few months of 25 are helping us establish what 26 would look like. That's normal practice. The return to work environment hasn't helped our ridership and our revenues, but we're starting to see a comeback, especially in the last 6 months of FY24. So I'm really looking forward to what we'll see in 25. In the next few months, we'll be able to project better estimates for FY26.
Okay, I'm totally supportive of this being a completely data-driven decision.
Yeah, I guess my only kind of add to that would be, I actually am surprised how well parking is responding in the last 6 months. I was kind of a little doom and gloom on parking for a while. Good example, East Falls. We have the police out doing citation ticketing almost every day now because we're way over 100% capacity on most days at East Falls.
Wow.
That's an example. And there's a reason people go to East Falls because you got 2 rail lines coming there and you have incredible frequency.
It's the frequency,
right?
Yeah.
But we look at it, I look at it on a daily basis. It's in our weekly and our monthly where we are. And every one of our parking facilities the trend is going in the right direction. I don't see a big linkage to the overall strategic real estate portfolio because in all of those areas identified, we want to do stuff with our partners already. And so there's places that are just already set up to do those kind of transactions. We just really need our partners to be able to figure out the financing in a tough capital real estate market, although quite frankly getting better, and especially as interest rates go down, we think over the next year to two, those real estate opportunities are going to continue to get better.
Okay. Okay, and then this is not a question, just a comment about the reserve concept. Obviously, managing PM has to be the top priority. I hear that. I don't disagree with that. But it is, it's pretty wild. Like when you step back and look at it, that WMATA does not have a reserve, and this is like, just like a basic finance best practice. There's no way to run a railroad to not have a reserve. And so in the long term, whether we need to roll this conversation into DMV moves or what have you, we have to start running this place like we think it's going to be around 2 years from now in the future, because people are building their whole lives. We're building our whole region and our whole economy around relying on it. So, we need to contain the current fiscal crisis, but not lose our eye on best practices for the long term.
Well said. Any other questions, comments? Okay. With no further business to come before the committee, we stand adjourned. We'll take a brief 5-minute break before starting the board meeting.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, or well, actually, it's still morning. Good morning, everyone. Paul Smedberg, First Vice Chair of the WMATA Board. Thank you for being here today. Since we called the roll at an earlier committee meeting, we'll move straight ahead to approval of the agenda. I'd like to consider the agenda approved as presented. Does anyone have any comments or objections to that? Hearing and seeing none, the agenda is approved as presented. We have 8 sets of minutes for approval. The board meeting from July 11th, 2024, special board meetings from August 21st and September 12th, board executive sessions from July 11th, July 31st, August 21st, August 29th, and September 12th, 2024. I'd like to consider these minutes approved as presented. Does anyone have any comments or objections?
Yeah, just one comment that this board is supposed to have an August recess and that rest is medicine.
Thank you, Dr. Lowe. Hearing none, the minutes are approved as presented. Thank you very much. We'll turn to two special employee spotlights. The first board spotlight this morning recognizes the bravery and dedication of Metro Transit Police Department Officer Jonathan Sanchez, who responded to a call at the Huntington Metro Station on July 16, 2024, for a suicidal person on top of the garage threatening to jump. Officer Sanchez arrived and observed Fairfax County Police engaging the subject. Officer Sanchez, a trained negotiator, quickly assessed the situation, assumed the role of primary negotiator, and began developing a rapport with the subject. His efforts were successful and ultimately saved the life of the subject. Officer Sanchez's actions were exceptional and life-saving. His technique, genuine interest in the subject, and the compassion were evident during the review of the incident. Not only did Officer Sanchez save the subject's life that day, but he also continues to speak with that person and provide him with guidance and encouragement. On behalf of the board, thank you for your amazing work. Officer Sanchez, I think we want you to stick around. We'll get a picture.
He's gone part.
Oh, he's part of that group too. Okay.
Double gold medal.
All right, there we go. All right. Okay, our second spotlight this morning recognizes the bravery and dedication of the Metro Transit Police Department officers who responded to the request for mutual aid from the United States Capitol Police Department during the events of January 6, 2021. On January 6, rioters violently breached the U.S. Capitol, assaulted police officers, and sought to disrupt Congress from performing its constitutional duty of counting the votes from the presidential election. Amid the chaos and danger, MTPD officers, along with Metropolitan Police and other partner agencies, played a critical role in regaining control of the Capitol grounds. The first responding MTPD officers were directed to the East Armory in order to disperse the mob within critical areas within the Capitol. These areas included the East Wing, the West Wing, and the Rotunda. MTPD officers used pepper ball launchers, issued non-lethal duty gear, and used hand-to-hand defensive tactics. Subsequently, a second team of MTPD officers approached the Capitol grounds and, alongside their counterparts, established a vital perimeter on the south side of the Capitol. Their quick actions ensured a safe evacuation of wounded officers and facilitated the continued effort to regain control of the building. Sergeant Brandon McRae specifically positioned himself at the lower level of the Capitol and assisted in escorting congressional staff to safety. Finally, MTPD's Explosive Ordnance Disposal Team, EOD units, responded to 2 pipe bombs located at the Republican National Committee and the Democratic National Committee headquarters. The EOD team was responsible to was able to successfully defuse the explosives. While investigating these threats, the EOD and Capitol Police apprehended a suspect in the vicinity, discovered 2 firearms on his person, and additional dangerous weapons, including a rifle, crossbow, and 11 Molotov cocktails in his vehicle. The officers' exceptional bravery, quick thinking, and unwavering commitment to duty during the crisis were pivotal in restoring order to the Capitol and ensuring the safety of the nation's leaders and citizens. Their collective actions reflect the highest traditions of service and professionalism. For their extraordinary actions, these MTPD officers have been awarded the Congressional Gold Medal and special recognition from the Metropolitan Police Department. At Metro, we recognize these officers for staying true to their oath to defend the Constitution of the United States from all enemies. Please play the names of our awardee recipients.
The Congressional Gold Medal recipients are Lieutenant Raymond Islas, Sergeant Stephen Henderson, Sergeant Brandon McCrae, Sergeant Gregory McNabb, Sergeant David Yashinsky, Sergeant Wayne Tabb, Sergeant Kenny Bain, Sergeant Dwayne Brown, Sergeant Gerald Rich Jr., Sergeant Prince George, Officer Gary Batalico, Officer Christopher Carter, Officer Carlo Santino, Officer Eric Kroom, Officer Andrew Diffley, Officer Matthew Dixon, Officer Brad Hanna, Officer Robert Lang, Officer Anthony Leo, Officer Angel Martinez, Officer Michael Paggio, Officer Jonathan Sanchez, Officer Francisco Santiago, Officer Daryl Smith, Officer Alexander Tax, Officer Andrew Toplin, Officer Eric Wright, Officer Christopher Young, Detective Adam Van Pruyen.
Now I'll ask our spotlight employees, or they are here, all forward. We'll take some pictures and we'll give them a resounding round of applause. Randy, did you want to say something?
Actually, you have the point?
I didn't get points. Okay, okay.
So the I think what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to let you go at ease here to get into a position of decision. So maybe we can all just push back when it's like 2 people. Maybe a few more members spread out. That's all right. Demo. Ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. We'll do a special single one.
I didn't either. I didn't either. Yep.
Scampering around, defusing bombs.
Yeah. No idea. Yeah.
Right. I didn't know any of that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, now we'll move on to our public comment and reports by our advisory boards. I don't think we didn't receive any online comments this month, right? Okay, so now we'll move to the in-person comments. Do we have a list of folks?
Denise
Oh,
Rush.
Denise, was it? I see there were other people here. Okay. Ms. Rush, you're up.
Michael.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Hey, Denise.
My name is Denise Rush. I'm Vice Chair of the Metro Access Board, Vice Chair of the National Federation for the Blind, and I'm on the AAC Board. I hope everyone had a good break and enjoyed themselves during August time off. I'm glad to hear that we have a surplus for the budget and we need to start getting something in place for every year so that we do not have turmoil at budget time. It's too hard on everybody. I live in PG County and they are concerned about the region, the transportation share of buses for PG County. We had a meeting with officials for PG to try to be a solution or head us in the correct direction. And it didn't go well. They did say, they bounced it back and said that we need to talk to our representatives on the board. And they dropped the name Don Drummer. We need to see Mr. Drummer. And I think we're just being ping pong back and forth. And we need to see, well, if we need to see Mr. Drummer, then we need to see Mr. Drummer and the representatives from PG and the concerned citizens and all of us look face to face and stop being ping pong back and forth for the solution. I do want to thank the board that I did live to see the day that the talking bus stops and some shelters were on Silver Hill Road. They talk, they speak in Spanish. I pushed them and they told me when the next bus is coming. I could not believe it. I'm very appreciative of that. And I want to also say that I haven't thanked the board that I can remember for all the women that they have appointed on the board. Because before, when I first started coming, we had no women on there. And we need all of us to work together. And we want to do the AAC committee. We want to do whatever we need to do to make sure that we have dedicated funding. So thank you.
Thank you, Denise. And we'll have the general manager will reach out to you to talk about that
All right.
first
And
issue.
oh, I'm sorry, just one more thing. The restrooms. The public needs to know where they can go to the restrooms. I keep asking about it, but we have Waymap. Can that be included in Waymap that we know where we can go to the restrooms? Have a good day.
Yeah. Thank you, Denise. We'll make sure the general manager reaches out.
Thank you.
Okay, and our final speaker, Mr. Lash. Or Glash, sorry. Michael, did you sign up?
Didn't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Forgot my hearing aid.
Oh.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Randy Clark and the negotiating team for working out a reasonable contract arrangement with Local 689. I think it was a very positive accomplishment. But I am concerned about the long-term cost of retiree health insurance and are unable to decide on a method for funding, pre-funding that benefit to provide for future cost. The union agreed to turn over about $30 million of money we collected over the last 4 years for retiree health insurance. That money will pay the cost of retiree health insurance for the post-2010 employees for about another 10 or 12 years, mainly because only a few of them retire. But in 2035, when that money runs out, the authority will be faced with $1 billion unfunded liability on retiree health insurance. That number comes from a study that we did with Paul Whittefield, the union, 3 or 4 years ago to determine the true cost of retiree health insurance, which turns out to be about 6% of wages. So the issue is, how are we going to fund this retiree health insurance going into the future? I think the best way to do it is in the way that we fund our pension system. We defer some of our wage increases. We have a surplus this year when pensions, actually Metro's pension contributions go down by about 2% because of the way stock market performed over the last couple of years. We should use some of that money to enhance the health and welfare retiree fund so we can reduce this long-term unfunded liability and eventually have a sustainable way of providing health insurance for our retirees in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. All right, we have no other public comments. We'll turn now to our Accessibility Advisory Committee Chair, Patrick Sheehan. Hey, Patrick, nice to see you in person this month.
What's that? Okay. Mike is good. Thank you. Great. Thank you. It's great to be here. A couple of things. I'd like to start off by saying on the topic of Metro Access, we have brought in about 7 new vendors to support the Abilities Ride program. So that program is robust, and the new providers, I think, are going to help to cover the area even more so. We also have some dedicated wheelchair vans to help that population through the ability to drive non-dedicated fleet, which I think is great. And lastly, we took a look at some new vehicles that are part of the dedicated fleet from Metro Access that are going to be more wheelchair-based. We had some suggestions, and those vans are being renovated, and we're seeing if our suggestions can be implemented. The second area that I'd like to talk about, well, first, Paul would like to be able to invite you to the AAC maybe over the next couple of months to talk about DMV moves. The AAC is very interested in whatever can be shared with respect to that group. I've shared a little bit, but probably not as much as you know. And also, we would like to be able to invite the new chair, Ms. Santos, also to our meeting. One of the things that impressed me with our last DMV moves meeting was the way the data is being delivered, either from the jurisdictions or from the local transit areas within the jurisdictions. I think that having the data done in a consistent, uniform way, being able to uniformly count where the transit is going, how reliable it is, and what we're seeing as far as progress is going to be critical moving forward. The work that Jordan Holt does on a quarterly basis, reporting to the board, is just so valuable. That's the kind of standard that I'd like to see done throughout the region, and maybe we can get there through DMV moves. I know that the subcommittees with the AAC, Bus and Rail, and then also Metro Access are so impressed with the work that she has done that they've invited members of her and members of her staff to help explain the data more fully to the subcommittees so they can put this data in as part of their work plans and work towards those goals. So I think that if we can replicate that in DMV moves, I think that's great. Following on what Denise said with respect to Prince George's County, I took a look this morning at their transit vision plan that just came out, I think in September. And what I'm interested in doing is talking to Mr. Drummond, of course, and also Prince George's County, I think Mr. Bellamy. We would like to be able to put together, if we can, a working group within the Bus and Rail Committee, because I think that there are some areas that the AAC could help ask questions, make some suggestions based on that report. I think there's a lot in that report that would be useful for people to take a look at and see what progress we can be made and see if we can introduce some improvements over time with respect to Prince George's County. 2/3 of the Metro Access trips that are out there come from Prince George's County. And I think if we look at the way the transportation, particularly public transportation, is being implemented in Prince George's County, I think we can make some improvements. I was, kind of surprised to hear that they need to build 25 miles worth of sidewalks in the future. Over the next 5 years, they're going to be putting 20 bus stops in per year. I would think there would be a larger amount of bus stops being put in. There are some micro-transit areas that they noted that provide service, but you have to give 14 days notice before you can use that service. Those are just a few of the things that in reading the plan this morning, that caught my eye, and I want to understand how they work, why they work. I think that if we can reduce the 2/3 of Metro Access trips from Prince George's County by building a more robust bus system throughout the county, I think it's going to help the region, and it's going to meet Prince George's County needs and also DMV moves needs. So pleased to be able to work with DMV moves. We want to try to put a focus on Prince George's County through our subcommittee. we really want to be part of the solution. As Denise said, we don't like pointing fingers. So you'll be getting more reports on our recommendations via the transit vision plan with Prince George's County moving forward. Questions for me?
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Any
Yes.
questions or comments for Mr. Sheehan? All right, thank you.
We good?
Patrick.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, very much. Now I'll call on Mr. Cole Stout for the RAC report. Mr. Stout. Good morning.
Good morning. This month, we were joined by Erica Cunningham to talk about community relations and outreach in Metro's larger shift to doing more consistent engagement with the community and things like Metro Fest, which we had a lot of great feedback from RAC members on, and thinking about how can the RAC be better plugged into those activities so that we're doing our job and connecting with riders, and thinking about what Metro does with the Youth Council, and I think we might try to add a youth member to the RAC in one of the at-large spots to ensure that we're getting that perspective on our group. But we spent a lot of time talking about a little after action on the Red Line shutdown over the summer and how the shuttle system worked. Nearly 1 million rides over the summer on those shuttles. Overall, the feedback was really good. The extra bus lanes and parking enforcement in the district was very well received. And as someone who rides on the 16th Street corridor a lot, having no parking during the day really sped up just the bus trips down 16th Street during the day. So I'm preaching to the choir here, but if we can work with the district to make those all-day bus lanes, that would be really great. And then also thinking about some constructive feedback we had was thinking about how the charter buses were not utilizing bus lanes all the time. So we know those are contractors and not WMATA folks who are trained on how to use those. So thinking about future shutdowns, how we can ensure that those buses are moving really great through those corridors, and thinking about the different security concerns on some of those shuttles since they're different layouts with the charter buses. More organizationally, we did have a number of vacancies pop up right before September meeting as folks moved over the summer or had new family commitments. So you can expect to see some new appointments come to you all in the next 2 months to fill up those seats. And then the rest of the year, next month, we plan to focus a lot on the items that we highlighted in our annual report, including rider safety and cleanliness. Next month, November will be all bus, thinking Better Bus and the new network, and digging into that with staff, thinking about the Clear Lanes project, and then finally in December, thinking about special events planning above and beyond our regular things that we have next year, like 4th of July. We also have inauguration next year and World Pride, and so how Metro is planning to engage with riders over schedule changes there and upcoming shutdowns in the next year. Any questions?
Thank you, Cole. Any questions for Mr. Stout? All right.
How was the trip to the mic?
Oh, it was awesome. We had 4 RAC members come out to the mic. Was it in August? So while we, the board got some rest, we stayed at work on the RAC, and we went out and had really great interaction with staff there, and seeing a little bit behind the scenes was really good to see. As a rider, we don't always get that perspective on what it takes to make sure those trains keep running and those buses keep moving. And when we see bunching on on a bus corridor, what's happening behind the scenes to relieve that and address customer issues en route. So it was really great, and we appreciate staff welcoming us into that center.
So just to be clear, the RAC had no meeting in August?
We didn't meet in August officially, but we did get together to do some exploring, as I like to say.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, now we'll move on to the chair's report. First, I'd like to highlight DMV Moves held its second task force meeting this past Monday at Metro's New Carrollton offices. As a reminder, DMV Moves is a joint initiative by the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, known as COG, and WMATA to develop a unified vision and sustainable funding model for public transit in our region. DMV Moves is taking a holistic approach at our transit network and will decide what our region wants and needs and how much it will cost. Our task force agenda demonstrated the tremendous progress that the task force and the community partners group and government partners advisory groups have made over the summer. The groups finalized the DMV Moves vision and goals. A community survey was also conducted where the public told us about their main challenges and top priorities for bus and rail. And based on feedback from the community, the advisory groups formulated initial recommendations around customer experience improvements and administrative and cost efficiencies. Finally, the task force examined potential transit system and funding scenarios, including options for creating new dedicated funding for transit. In terms of next steps, the task force will meet again in November to adopt policy recommendations and examine various funding scenarios. We hope to have a preferred plan and funding scenario approved by December. I'd like to thank our regional elected leaders who are participating, have attended both meetings, and I know are engaged on this issue in some very critical conversations. I also want to highlight my fellow board members, Dr. Lowe, Ms. Klein, Mr. McAndrew, who are also on the task force, the task force. We look forward to building a better transit network that serves the region's mobility, sustainability, and economic needs for generations to come. And finally, as a board, we'd like to recognize Hispanic Heritage Month, which is celebrated each year from September 15th to October 15th. It honors the significant contributions of Hispanic and Latin Americans to the history, culture, and achievements of the United States. This year's theme, Pioneers of Change, Shaping the Future Together, highlights the trailblazers who have led the way for future generations through their innovation, leadership, and unwavering dedication to progress in various fields, including education, science, business, the arts, and advocacy. Hispanic Heritage Month does not cover a single month, but instead begins in the middle of September and ends in the middle of October. The framework of this month, or this 30-day period, is significant because many Central American countries celebrate their independence within these dates, beginning on the 15th of September, with Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua. By aligning with these independent states, Hispanic Heritage Month honors the resilience and determination of the Hispanic community. Hispanic Heritage Month is an opportunity to shine a spotlight on the unique voices and experiences of Hispanic and Latino Americans and recognize their history, their journeys, and achievements. Through these celebrations, we can all help and inspire young generations to bring communities together. This concludes our report, and now I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Clark, our GM and CEO.
Thank you, Chair. Going to do a few things here at the GM report this month. Going to highlight some just things that have been going on, some have been mentioned today, and then I'm going to take a moment and just kind of talk about the year ahead, just kind of grounding us all on a lot of things ahead of us in fiscal year 25 between now and July. We'll just call it July 4th next year. Some things coming back to the board, some things are just operational, but really where most of our energy and focus is on. As you'll see here, most of this has been kind of talked about. A couple of highlights. I really want to thank our customers' patience for all of their, all their patience during the red line shutdown. Very significant impact to our customers. Obviously, the premise of the shutdown was to support our partners in Maryland for the Purple Line, but we took advantage of that and got an enormous amount of maintenance done. The goal is to not be up in that area doing maintenance for a while, but in a lot of work done. I actually rode to Glenmont on Monday, and it was a much smoother trip. So really good work that had to get done. In August, we had our Metro Back to School event. This is holistic Metro, but really led by Transit Police as the primary. We had over 2,200 people attend this event, and it's a really great way that we're connecting with community, especially younger people in our community, and building that relationship with public safety, knowing that they're there to help them. I want to thank board member Martin Proctor for coming to our Nassau-WMATA joint mural project that you can see right around the corner when you come off the train. It's called Satellites of Hope, and it's just a beautiful piece to fill in that area, and I really appreciate her remarks during it. Lastly, on that slide, that actually is Pepper and Jelly, my two little buddies, but Yeah, well, they're only for like 40 pounds each. But I want to highlight the great work Georgetta and the entire marketing team are doing. We were up over 300% in retail merch sales in a year. And obviously that's not solving our financials, but it does show you, I think, the value of the brand of Metro in this community and how many people just love the Metro brand and what we bring to this community. So we're going to continue to have interesting offerings and more to come, but another holiday pop-up event coming for this winter as well. On the next slide, a couple things I want to highlight. Our 8000 series cars are moving along. The chief operator officer, the chief fleet officer, and I had an opportunity to visit with the senior executive from Hitachi, really talking through schedule, final design, things of that nature. Very good meeting. It's already led to some changes in their staffing and support of the project. Obviously, the first group of these are going to be put together, built in Italy, with the assembly of a large part of the fleet going to be done at the new factory that Hitachi is building in, or actually it's already in production of vehicles up in Maryland. So exciting project there, and be more coming out on that as we do the capital budget plan. I want to take a moment and highlight Tom Webster, Greg Garback, and the entire team for the Fairgate modernization project. We just wrapped up about a week and a half ago, I guess it was. It was probably the number one thing the board asked me, quite frankly. The chair called me before I became WMATA GM and said, what are we doing? And I just really appreciate how hard Tom and the team dug in, took this serious, failed fast. We tried multiple pilots to get it right. Fare evasion is down, as you know, about 82% on the rail side. It's made a significant difference also on revenue, but also on the public safety side. Other agencies are basically copying our design now. 3 or 4 agencies have done that with our vendor S-Traffic, who just did a fantastic job. So I just want to highlight that. Bottom left-hand corner, we are worked really closely, and I want to appreciate the board for last month earlier this month, sorry. Sometimes feels like it's been a month when it's only part of the weekend. Metro days, right? A day is a week is a month. But these are the additional services we're doing in DC as the circulator shuts down. So again, really, really emphasize, we are not taking over the circulator. We are trying to add bus service to do critical links inside the city. And then lastly on this slide is celebrating our new operators and signal techs and bus supervisors that we just had a ceremony last week. So continuing on our talented teams, making sure we're bringing in good people and promoting people to fill our ranks, and really emphasizing their role in driving incredible, safe, reliable system for this community. Next up is just a highlight. This has been put out publicly, but I want to make sure, and we're going to get more information on this as we approach, but we are going to be doing another winter construction activity in late December. Obviously, I want to really reiterate to the public at large, this is the lowest ridership time of the year, and the work is critical to get done. It doesn't seem sexy. It seems kind of like, why can't you do that overnight? The system's a big system. We just simply cannot do this type of work overnight, and it would require an enormous amount of weekend shutdowns. So it's the old rip the Band-Aid off approach. We can get in there much more cost efficiently, impact the least amount of people. I really appreciate how much DC helped us last year with the DuPont and Farragut shutdown, and we're working collaboratively with them again this year. This will impact people. There's no getting around it anytime we do an impact, but we're really trying to get in and get out. This is critical work for us to run a safe blue, orange, and silver system. So whether you're at Vienna to Franconia to New Carrollton to Largo and anywhere in between, this section is where those trains run. It's the most traveled part of our system, and it is critical work if we're going to run a safe inauguration, World Pride, Cherry Blossom, and daily service that we need. So Andy's team is going to go in, really get this done, and we're going to perform great bus and shuttle operations. So just want to highlight this work again. Okay, next up, I got a couple slides that I think are just important to kind of talk about, laying out what the year ahead really looks like and where this senior team's focused, and really talking through your collaboration of the board with the strategic transformation plan. So obviously, the first couple are obvious, but I want to make sure they're listed, which is our team is focused on service delivery every day, safe, reliable, frequent service to grow ridership. That is what we are doing every day. We're also continuing to foster this culture of transparency, accountability, and regional partnership. And that's everything to do with real estate, to DMV moves, to our online dashboard and tools. We want to make sure people can see everything we're doing. Thanks to the chair and the other members of the task force, we're obviously very focused on DMV moves and really creating this long-term dedicated funding, but also a better regional integrated transit system and a vision for what we next need to be. And so this is a big deal for this organization, so supporting that work. Better bus network redesign. Obviously, we've talked about this, I don't want to say ad nauseum, but obviously significantly here at the board and public. There'll be a discussion in October. It's our anticipation there'll be a board consideration and action in November, with an implementation in June. But an incredible effort here for this organization. It's kind of hitting the start line in November because then we actually have to implement, and the implementation side is actually even more complicated than the network redesign to get to the board approval. So a lot of things happen, you get approval and oh great, it's over. Now you got to actually go implement, and it's going to be a big effort on this organization. Tied to that is our subsidy formula modernization, and obviously discussion with the board in October, and then potential consideration in November. So they kind of go hand in hand. On the rail side, we are really focused on the presentation you had today on ATO, design speeds, point and call, you name it, everything to continue to drive us to be a safe and reliable system. And then the red line in December, hopefully we'll be on ATO and in all lines in FY25. Considerable focus by this agency on that. The next slide, please. While I appreciate the board's approval and public comment recognizing our 689 contract, we also have two others that we're in the process of right now. Local 922, and also the FOP, or Patrol or Police Agreement. So we're in negotiation process on that, and we look forward to taking those to the board for action, hopefully this year. And again, continue labor harmony and overall cost management, and all the factors that we're after. So another thing the team's focused on. You all know about our ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning. This is an incredible focus, especially if you will back a house. Customers don't see any of this, but this is the brains of how the whole organization works. HR, procurement, all of our administrative process modernization efforts that we are doing. This is one of those projects that has a lot of downside if it's not right, but enormous upside done right. So we're spending a lot of time and managing on the resources to get this right. This is a generational change, so we can leave the organization better off year after year going forward. So really focused on that. I mentioned the 8K program. We're going to come back and talk about that in the capital budget discussion and the alignment around that, but also bus fleet modernization. Going to bring the board a serious conversation around zero emission and the reality of what's happening in manufacturing on zero emission, and just the enormous costs around electrification that have happened in the country, specifically on the facility side. Everyone's building electric vehicles and data centers at the exact same time with about $1 trillion of funding. So prices have certainly gone up. We have to have a serious conversation about that. On the fare system, our goal here, we have a procurement in process, is to get to open payment for World Pride 2025. We know we're going to have hundreds of thousands, ultimately a couple million people for this event, and we want to make it as seamless as possible for people to tap and go into the system. So that is where our goal is, and we're kind of laser focused on a senior exec team on that. You've heard a lot about our digital transformation. This is everything from paper forms to digital forms to our new signage in stations to how we do update to Metro Pulse that's coming. We are transforming this place very rapidly into being a tech-oriented organization. Major focus. It also is connected to a ton of outstanding CAPs, whether they're from NTSB, WMSC, OIG. A lot of stuff here is about data integrity, quality assurance, and the digital transformation is where we're focused. And then the last two is, one is incredibly operations-based. We have election coming up, and there's obviously concerns about the election itself. Quite frankly, we're working with all of our police and public safety partners on that. But inauguration, always a big event. And it's not just the day of, as everyone knows. Cherry blossoms, I believe last year Cherry Blossoms was the busiest cherry blossom since 2015 or 2014. If we have some good weather, I don't expect that to automatically go backwards. We probably could even be busier. World Pride, as I just mentioned, and that rolls into July 4th. Those are major events, not just for us, but every one of our regional partners, DDOT, MPD, everyone else. And then, this goes into Virginia and Maryland as well. So we are going to really have to manage our team resources, everything from regular service, fatigue management, overtime, public safety. It's going to be a big concentration on our team to execute these. If these don't go well, it is a big problem for this organization. So we are a big focus on that. And then last but not least, and I know Board Member Klein would probably especially like this focus, is federal funding reauthorization. It's not that far away from reauthorization time, and we'll be doing a lot of work specifically at APTA and the legislative committee in APTA. Federal reauthorization is a big deal for every transit agency, but especially important for us. And we are we're the face of transit for Congress in a lot of ways. So we are really focused on that, and we'll want to come back and have some deep conversations with the board about that. Obviously the election coming up will probably influence federal funding reauthorization, but there's everything from operating assistance, which Senator Van Hollen has a bill out now that we very much support and trying to move, to some regulatory reform that I think could be really helpful for our industry. So wanted to lay out, this is really where the senior team is focused. Quite frankly, that is an enormous agenda outside of just regular stuff. And then the last slide is just to highlight what Nutundi mentioned. This is the budget process that we're working through. So FY26 and 27, so this year we're going to bring you the 2-year, just like we did last year. One for approval, but one is a forecast. And then our 6-year capital plan. We'll have a really good discussion in October, have another big discussion in November, and then the proposed budget for the GM project at our 1 December meeting. Then public comment period will obviously initiate in the new year. We'll do a lot of public engagement on that. I'm sure there'll be additional conversations at the Finance Committee. And generally, we have board action by April, so we could do our schedules and picks and all of those type of things. So obviously busy. Budget by itself is just like a kind of a whole organizational-wide activity. We've already started our budget conversations. There's been a lot of meetings between Utundi's team and every department already on headcount, cost efficiency, needs, all of those things. It's been happening now for probably a better part of a month. Budget kind of just closes the year and we immediately start. But I want to really give the board just a good space of where our roadmap here is on the senior team. So, and I hope that's helpful too. I'd also like to work towards doing a multi-year coming up where we could really start laying out multiple years of where the focus will have to be. But at least I wanted to start grounding us, trying to move us a little bit more on seeing the larger strategy ahead than just the topic by itself. So hopefully the board finds that helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Clark. Any questions for the GM? Okay. We'll move on. We have 2 consent agenda items before us today. I'd like to move approval of the following. Authorization for a public hearing on the Ballston Second Station entrance. Staff requests approval to hold a compact public hearing to amend the mass transit plan by constructing a new west entrance to the Ballston Metro Station in Arlington County. The entrance, if approved, will be funded, designed, and constructed by Arlington County and turned over to Metro for operation once complete. The second item, implementing reforms to the Office of Inspector General. Approval of a resolution for the board to adopt and to direct staff to implement the measures set forth in staff notices 2024-012, dated March 24th, 2024, and 24-028, dated September 11th, 2024, and policy instruction 13.4 /4, implementing improved OIG processes. This action will also amend the term of the Inspector General's reappointment to a 3-year term. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Lowe. They're consent items, so there's no discussion. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Now we'll move on to the reports by the jurisdictions. The District of Columbia, Dr. Lowe.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. NVTC, Mr. Letourneau, I don't have anything. Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah, thank you. WSTC, Mr. McAndrew.
Yeah, just a couple. Well, some folks were resting in August. We were busy in the state of Maryland, but most of this is focused on collaboration and partnership. I think it's just 4 items I wanted to highlight. One, we appreciate where DMV Moves was hosted this week. I think it really enabled our regional partners to see the quality of and the pride of the Maryland WMATA headquarters where the meeting was hosted. It's a great facility, but it also enabled folks to see what is coming with New Carrollton and the development that's happening there. But it's really, acknowledgement of WMATA's leadership and collaboration both with the state, but also with Prince George's through the Joint Development Program, because it's a work of progress. But when it's done, it's going to connect not just to WMATA, it's Mark's system, it's the Northeast Regional Rail for Amtrak, but also here soon the Purple Line as well. So it's a great success story, and our colleague Senator Augustine was able to tell it to his peers at the meeting. The other 2 on transit-related matters. One, recently, earlier this month, Montgomery County opened the Great Seneca Transit Network and launched 2 new transit lines, the pink and the green. And I think the success story is essentially, it hopefully will induce greater use of the Shady Grove Metro Station. These are 2 new lines that are going to be far faster and more convenient for many job seekers for the biohealth corridor there in Up County, as well as numerous K-12 schools, hospital, and the universities of Shady Grove having better service. So it's a great opportunity. We also are continuing to work with WMATA and Montgomery County on review and analysis of the utility and the ongoing work for the Georgia Avenue bus lanes. Those were temporary lanes through the summer, and we extended this through December, and we're working in partnership to assess what, if anything, we should maintain into a more permanent posture, but good work being done with the WMATA team there. And then finally, tomorrow morning, the Washington Suburban Transit Commission is holding its semi-annual meeting. We don't hold as regular meetings as our peers across the way, so just want to acknowledge this is a hybrid meeting, and you can find more information if you want to participate on WSTC's website. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McAndrew. Federal Government, Ms. Klein.
Yes, thank you. I want to back up 1 second because when you asked if we had any questions for the GM, my mind was still reeling from all that information.
Oh, okay.
But it's not actually a question, it's just a comment. I think actually it's extremely helpful to set out an agenda so that we can all see what's coming in a more comprehensive way. But what it speaks to really is all the work that the team is going to be doing over the next year. And I just want to say, I know for me, and I think for the other board members as well, we have a lot of confidence in this team. The work that they've been doing over the past few years has been exceptional. And so I have full confidence. I just wanted to make sure that people knew that we talk as a board about the strength of this team. And that doesn't always get out. So I want to make sure people know that. With regard to the federal government report, I just want to follow up also on something that it was in the chair's report, since we are celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. I just wanted to highlight that we have a phenomenal Latino leader at the FTA, Acting Administrator Veronica Vanterpool, who has been doing a phenomenal job, and we really thank her for her support of transit as well as WMATA specifically. And I know Ms. Martin Proctor also has a report.
Hi, thank you, Board Member Klein. I wanted to report out on behalf of the federal government. We wish to highlight WMATA and Metro and the Metro community and their progress with regards to accessibility as we move forward to become that gold standard I know we all want to be. Before the ADA, there was Section 504. September 26, 1973, today, the Rehabilitation Act was put into place. This is the act in federal law codified in 29 U.S.C. 501 established the principles to sponsor the bill. The sponsor of the bill was Representative John Brasner, please forgive me if that name was mispronounced. The Rehabilitation Act of 1973 prohibits discrimination based on disability in programs conducted by the federal government and any agency receiving federal funding. This federal employment and this new act allowed for individuals with disabilities to now become contractors within the federal government and was the first law to provide equal access for people with disabilities by removing those architectural barriers to employment and transportation. In 1977, people with disabilities held sit-ins on this date to confirm and demand action on this law. It granted accessibility, transportation being the first of several. We just wanted to highlight and celebrate this day in access and progress and thank WMATA and the Metro community for moving forward in those principles.
Thank you for joining us today. We'll now move to board executive session. In accordance with the bylaws, I, Paul Smedberg, request that the Board of Directors convene an executive session to discuss the following matters pursuant to Article 2, Paragraph 9, subsections A, budgetary matters that may affect legal positions of WMATA contracts or sensitive relationships with local jurisdictions and the federal government, and H, development of WMATA position or strategy on pending or proposed federal or state legislation. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Lowe. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much.
You'll go to the media avail and then
Yeah.
come up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Come up.